I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The plan was to have a late lunch with an old friend across town, maybe a beer or two, talk about the old days. But he cancelled last minute, said his wife wasn't feeling well. So I got in my truck and drove home, thinking maybe I'd surprise her with some Chinese takeout. That used to be our thing. Mongolian beef for me, sweet and sour chicken for her. It was just past 2 in the afternoon when I pulled into the driveway. The sun was high, no breeze, one of those quiet days that feels too still. I remember thinking something felt off. The house didn't look different, but I don't know, sometimes your gut just knows before your eyes do. The front door was unlocked. Strange. She always locked it during the day, especially since that breaking down the block a few months back. I stepped inside, the usual creak in the floorboards greeting me, and called out her name. No answer. I set the bag of food on the counter and headed toward the hallway. That's when I heard it. A sound I hadn't heard in years, and never like this. Soft. Rhythmic. And coming from the garage. I stopped cold. My first thought wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't anger. It wasn't suspicion. It was confusion. Pure, heavy confusion. I took a few slow steps toward the door. It was cracked open. Just enough. What I saw, I'll never forget it. She was bent over the hood of my old Mustang. The same car I spent 2 summers rebuilding. Her hands were flat on the metal, her head down. And behind her, pants halfway down, was a man moving like he had every right to be there. Like he'd done it before. And he had. Because when he turned his head and I saw his face, I stopped breathing. It was my brother. Joe. He didn't say anything. Just froze. She gasped when she saw me and tried to cover herself, but it was too late. Everything I'd ever trusted snapped like dry wood in a fire. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a punch. I didn't even close the door behind me. I just walked out. Down the hall, out the front, got in my truck, and drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove until the gaslight came on. Ended up at an old fishing spot about 40 miles out, the one Dad used to take us to when we were kids. I parked and sat there for what felt like hours. No music. No calls. Just the ticking of the engine as it cooled. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a cheap motel off Route 7, the kind with paper-thin walls and a TV bolted to the dresser. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with my boots still on, staring at the ceiling. You don't just lose a wife that way. You lose your past. Your future. Everything in between. 50 years. That's how long we'd been together. High school sweethearts. 3 kids. 2 houses. A lifetime. All of it undone in one afternoon by the 2 people I would have died for without thinking. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled out the little notebook I used to keep grocery lists in. On the first page, I wrote one word. Enough. No rage. No drama. Just a decision. A man can only take so much before something inside him changes. Not breaks, changes. And in that quiet room, with the smell of bleach and cigarette smoke in the walls, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't about saving anything. It wasn't about getting answers or apologies. I didn't want to hear reasons or regrets. What I wanted, what I needed, was to make sure neither of them ever forgot what they did. So I made a plan. And it started with Joe. The morning after, I didn't eat. Didn't shower. Just stared at the wall until the sun lit up the edges of the stained motel curtains. My phone buzzed 3 times before I even picked it up. Her name was there. Same contact photo as always, her smiling with the dog we buried last year. I didn't answer. She tried again. 10 minutes later. Then again. By noon, there were 11 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 2 text messages. All from her. The last one said, "Please, just talk to me. It's not what you think." That phrase, "not what you think," it crawled under my skin. Like I hadn't seen it with my own damn eyes. Like she wasn't pressed up against my car like it was their honeymoon suite. I threw the phone across the room. It bounced off the dresser, landed face down on the motel carpet. I didn't care if it broke. For once, I wanted something else to feel the kind of break I felt. I got dressed slow. Old jeans, plain flannel, boots I'd worn through 2 winters. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see the same man. Something had left me. Something had moved in, too. Quieter. Meaner. Focused. The first stop was the storage unit on Oak Hill. I had a box there, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old records, documents, a few photos from the Navy, and one small folder I'd labeled "for when the time comes." I didn't know what that meant when I wrote it. I do now. It had copies of our marriage license, property deeds, bank account numbers, passwords she'd probably forgotten I had. All neatly organized. I tucked it under my arm and walked out. Next stop, the print shop. I made 6-color copies of one specific photo, Edger and her in the garage. Caught mid-act. I'd taken a picture right before I walked out. My hands must have done it on autopilot, like my body knew I'd need proof even if my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. From there, I drove to Joe's house. He lived in the next town over, in a brick ranch-style place with a flagpole out front and that same stupid gnome in the yard he'd had since '98. His wife's car wasn't there. Good. I didn't need her for this. I didn't knock. Just walked up the steps and opened the screen door. He opened the main door 5 seconds later, eyes wide like a kid caught smoking behind the school gym. "Ray," I shoved the photo into his chest. He looked down. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I didn't say a word. Just turned around and walked back to my truck. That's the thing about silence, it's heavier than yelling. It hangs there. Lingers. Makes people feel the weight of what they did. Back in the truck, I took a breath, rolled down the window, and let the cold wind hit my face. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. The next few days were quiet. She kept calling. Leaving voicemails. Telling me she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that she didn't know why she did it. That she still loved me. I didn't respond. Instead, I made a list. Not just of things to do, but of names. People who'd known. People who might have seen the signs. Neighbors. Church friends. Her sister. Maybe even our oldest son. I didn't trust anyone now. Anyone could have known. Anyone could have helped keep that lie alive. One by one, I wrote them all down. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because if I was going to start over, I needed to know what was real, and what was built on bullshit. I moved into a rental 2 towns over. Small place. 1 bedroom. Enough to sleep, eat, and think. I brought the essentials, tools, a few clothes, my records, my truck. Left everything else behind. No notes. No letters. No explanations. Let her wonder. I spent my days driving. Not far. Just enough. Small diners. Quiet fishing spots. I talked to strangers more than I ever had before. And every time someone asked if I had a wife, I paused. Then said, "Not anymore." Eventually, the calls slowed down. Then stopped. And for the first time in over 50 years, there was silence. But it wasn't peace. Because I still had one thing left to do. Joe wasn't going to get away with it. Not just because he touched her. But because he looked me in the eye and didn't even flinch. Because he stood there in my garage, my space, and betrayed me like it was nothing. So I started watching him. Not stalking. Observing. His routines. His habits. His friends. Where he went. Who he saw. I kept notes. Took pictures. Because when I made my move, it wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be surgical. And permanent. I waited a week. 7 full days without saying a word to her or him. No calls. No texts. Not even a damn glance on social media. I knew if I made a move too early, it'd feel like some emotional tantrum. But I wasn't emotional anymore. I was done being hurt. I was focused now. Every day, I got up at 6, brewed black coffee, sat by the window of my rental, and watched the sky shift from dark to gray. It's funny what happens when your heart breaks in silence. The noise stops. Everything slows down. People think pain is loud, it's not. It's quiet. It's cold. It's methodical. And it teaches you to pay attention. By the second morning, I had a routine. Drive past Joe's place around 8. He'd just leave for work. Same beige Toyota, same briefcase under his arm like he was still someone worth respecting. I watched from a block away. He never looked around. That's the thing about people who betray you, they assume you'll disappear once they're done. They don't realize you're just getting started. I followed him once. Just once, to get a feel. He parked outside his office, a local contractor shop where he'd been doing project bids for the last 10 years. Nothing fancy. But he had access to company accounts. He handled payroll. That detail stuck with me. I went home and wrote it down in the notebook. Under his name, access to funds. No cameras in parking lot. Thursday evening, I visited Nancy. Nancy was my cousin's ex-wife. Sweet woman. Smart. Used to be in IT before she got fed up and started running a flower shop. She owed me a favor from way back, long story involving a drunk ex-husband, a flat tire, and a Thanksgiving turkey. I told her I needed help looking into some files. Nothing illegal. Just sensitive. She didn't ask questions. Handed me a burner laptop and said, "Don't break it." That night, I didn't sleep. I spent 7 hours reading every online trail I could find on Joe. Property records, tax info, work emails from shared systems. I found something around 3 in the morning. An expense report with 2 names on it, Joe, and a woman named Tina L., paid trip to San Diego. Hotel. Dinners. One of the dates overlapped with the week our mom was dying in the hospital. I wrote it down. It wasn't just betrayal of me anymore. It was a pattern. He was a liar. A cheater. And a coward. Next day, I visited the church. Ours. The one she dragged me to every Sunday morning for 47 years, even when I just wanted to sleep in. I walked through the side entrance, straight to the little office where Pastor Ron usually did his reading. He looked surprised to see me. "Raymond," he said, standing up, hand extended. "Been a while." I nodded. "It's about her." He paused. "What happened?" "She slept with my brother." His hand slowly dropped. He didn't speak for a moment. Just sat down. "I'm not asking for counseling," I said. "Or prayer. I'm asking for facts." How long have you known? His face told me everything. I stood there, watching a man I'd trusted for half a century shrink in front of me. He mumbled something about not wanting to interfere and assuming it was over. I walked out before he could finish. Another name in the notebook. Ron. By the weekend, the list had 9 names. All people who either knew, suspected, or helped cover it up. Each one got a number. Each number got a plan. Sunday night, I parked outside Joe's house again. Lights were on. I could see silhouettes through the curtains. Laughter. The kind that stings when you're outside looking in. I waited until just past midnight. Then I stepped out, gloves on, hood up. I didn't break in. Didn't touch anything illegal. I slipped one of the photos, the garage photo, into the mailbox. Another under his windshield wiper. One more taped to the side door. Then I left. Next morning, I checked social media. Nothing. But by afternoon, his wife's account vanished. 2 hours later, a friend posted a vague status, as sometimes the truth is the ugliest thing of all. I smiled for the first time in days. Not because I was happy. Because it was working. I wasn't just hurting him. I was unraveling him. Piece by piece. I waited 3 more days before making the next move. Not because I was unsure, I wasn't, but because timing matters. People like her, they operate on patterns. She had routines that hadn't changed in decades. Tuesday was bridge club. Thursday was groceries at the co-op, Friday was choir practice at the church. She still wore the same green coat I bought her in '04. Still carried that oversized purse full of receipts and peppermint candies. I didn't need to spy. I just needed to remember. That Friday, I drove to the church parking lot. I didn't park close. I waited across the street, engine off, watching. It was 5:46 p.m. when she pulled in. I saw her get out, fix her scarf, look at her reflection in the car window. Still trying to look decent. Still trying to pretend like she was the same woman everyone believed she was. She had no idea that inside her purse, tucked behind her wallet, was a small USB drive I'd placed there 2 days ago. One of those tiny ones, no label, just metal and plastic. On it was a single file, a photo of her and Joe, and a short video clip from my garage camera. Nothing graphic. Just enough. Her voice, his hands. The betrayal, frozen in time. I'd slipped it in while she was at the hair salon. The same way I used to surprise her with notes back when we were young, quiet, gentle, personal. Now I used that same skill to twist the knife. She went inside. 15 minutes later, I followed. Not through the front. Through the rear hallway that led to the side chapel. I knew every inch of that place. I helped build the damn thing back in '83. The choir was rehearsing. Harmonies floated down the hallway. I didn't look in. Didn't want to see her pretending everything was normal. I slipped into the church office. Ron wasn't there. His desk was a mess, as usual. I found a printed list of committee meetings, flipped to the page for next Thursday, the church fundraiser planning team. Her name was on it. Perfect. I took out an envelope. Inside was a printed photo, not of the garage. A different one. A screenshot from her text messages. Can't stop thinking about you. Still sore from yesterday, winky face with Joe's name right above it. I'd found it in her old iCloud backup. She never changed her password. Still used our anniversary. Some people make it too easy. I slid the envelope under Ron's door. By the time I stepped outside, the choir had finished. They were gathering in small groups, laughing, hugging. She stood with 2 women, smiling like everything was fine. But I saw it, the nervous twitch in her hand, the way she kept checking her purse. She'd seen the USB. I got in my truck and drove away. Saturday morning, I heard from Mark. Mark was one of our oldest friends. We met him and his wife on a camping trip back in the 80s. He called me, voice low, serious. "You okay, Ray?" "Been better." He was quiet for a second. Then said, "She came by this morning. Told me you'd left." "She didn't say why." "She didn't tell you about Joe?" Silence. I told him everything. Straight. Calm. Just the facts. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Jesus." "Yeah." Then he said something I didn't expect. "I believe you." I waited for a catch. None came. I always thought something was off about them. The way she looked at him. The way he joked around her when you weren't watching. That hit harder than I expected. All those years, and I never saw it. "She's unraveling, Ray," he added. "She's scared." Good. By Monday, I started seeing the signs. Her social media went private. She stopped showing up at Bridge Club. Her friend Pam posted a quote about betrayal and false sisters. I didn't have to dig, the ripples were spreading on their own. Tuesday morning, I left a package at her doorstep. No return address. Inside, the wedding ring she gave me. The one I hadn't worn since that day. Alongside it, a copy of our marriage license. I'd crossed out the word wife and wrote liar in red ink. Petty? Maybe. But I wanted her to feel it. To hold the weight of what she'd ruined. Not in a scream. In silence. That evening, she called. I didn't pick up. She left a message. Her voice was shaking. "I don't know what you're doing, Ray. But please stop. You're scaring me." That was the point. I wasn't here to argue. I was here to dismantle her. She wanted to pretend this was still some kind of salvageable marriage, some mistake to be brushed over with time and guilt trips. But she'd misunderstood who I was now. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her consequence. And I was just getting started. I never needed revenge to be loud. In fact, I preferred it quiet. Like frost creeping across a window at night, slow, silent, but destructive. That's how I started working on the part of her life she cared about more than our marriage. Her image. See, she always prided herself on being respectable. Church lady. Community organizer. The kind of person who brought casseroles to sick neighbors and wrote little prayers on cards. But behind all of that was someone who cared more about how people saw her than how she actually was. I knew her weak point. So I started with the church. That envelope I'd left for Pastor Ron didn't go unnoticed. By Tuesday, he tried calling me twice. I didn't answer. I didn't need to talk. I just needed him to see what kind of person he'd been standing next to at the pulpit for the past 40 years. The day after, the whispers began. Small ones, like rustling leaves. Nothing loud. Just enough. I knew how people in small towns work. Nobody says anything to your face, but the looks change. The pauses in conversation. The way they start with "bless her heart" and end with silence. I timed everything for Thursday evening, the fundraiser planning meeting. She showed up like always. Hair fixed, jacket buttoned just right, that same stiff smile like she'd never broken a single rule in her life. But I'd already done the work. A few hours earlier, I dropped off a second envelope in the church kitchen. Tucked it between the hymn books and the coffee filters. It had printed screenshots of those messages, more photos, just the edges, enough to raise questions but leave doubt. Doubt, after all, is more corrosive than truth. She never saw it coming. After the meeting, according to a message I got from an old friend who still sat on the committee, 2 women asked to speak privately with her. They asked her if there was anything she wanted to confess before things went further. She denied everything. That's when they showed her the printouts. They didn't accuse. They didn't yell. They just watched her face fall. I imagined it, that moment when the floor gives way under someone and they are still trying to smile like everything's fine. That hollow look in the eyes. The shame leaking through the cracks. That night, she didn't go home. She checked into a local inn. The same place we'd stayed at on our 25th anniversary. I wondered if she remembered that. Probably did. People always remember where they were when things start to die. Meanwhile, I was busy. I'd made a burner account on Facebook. Name, A Truth Hurts. Real subtle. I sent out messages to 5 of her closest friends. Not with accusations. Just questions. Hey, is it true what happened between her and Joe? That's all it took. One of them replied, what? What happened? 2 hours later, they all knew. By Friday, her social circle had collapsed. No more likes. No comments. A couple of them even unfriended her. She probably thought I was hacking her life apart from a basement somewhere. I wasn't. I was sitting on the porch of my rental house, drinking black coffee and watching squirrels chase each other across the fence. Peaceful. Controlled. Calculated. She called again. Didn't answer. She left a message I still remember word for word. Ray. I don't know what's happening. People are turning on me. They think I don't know what they think. I swear to God, I didn't want to hurt you. I lost myself. Please. Please stop this. It wasn't a confession. It was fear. Good. That night, I mailed something to the Women's Guild at the church. Anonymously, of course. Inside the envelope was a single sentence typed on clean white paper. If the mask has cracks, it's not a mask, it's her real face. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. By Sunday, she'd been asked to step back for a while. No more meetings. No more choir. No more praying for the community she betrayed while preaching virtue. I didn't rejoice. But I slept. For the first time in weeks, I slept the whole night through. Because this wasn't just about punishment anymore. It was about justice. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The call came from an unknown number. I don't usually answer those. But something in me said to pick up. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the kind of silence that follows you around and makes everything feel heavier than it should. Ray, the voice said. Don't hang up. Joe. It was the first time I'd heard his voice since that day in the garage. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. Like someone who hadn't slept right in weeks. Good. You've made your point, he said. I didn't respond. There's no excuse. I know that. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I need to talk. I could have hung up. I wanted to. But something held me. You got 10 seconds, I said. He exhaled, shaky. I messed up. I betrayed you. I betrayed everything. I deserve whatever's coming. But you not just hitting me. You hurting my family. My son. He's being bullied at school. My wife's sleeping at her sister's. You've poisoned everything. I leaned back in my chair, phone pressed to my ear. You poisoned it, Joe. I just made sure people saw the color of the water. Silence. Then he said something that caught me off guard. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan it. It started after Mom's funeral. She was crying. I was drinking. We both said things we shouldn't have. And then he trailed off like that made it better. She's your brother's wife, Joe. I know. She was my wife for 50 years. I know that too. There was nothing else to say. You wanted to talk, I said. You talked. And I ended the call. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the weight of that conversation. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because it confirmed what I already suspected. He thought guilt was enough. Like if he felt bad, then somehow that would even the score. It wouldn't. That night, I went through some old boxes in the garage. Not at my old house, I never went back there, but the small garage behind my rental. I found a folder I hadn't looked at in years. It had documents from when we helped Joe refinance his mortgage back in '09. I'd co-signed for him. Stupid move. But I did it because back then, I thought family meant something. Inside was a copy of the contract. A little note he'd written me, thanking me for always having his back. I burned it in a coffee can behind the house. Next morning, I drove out to the county clerk's office. Asked for any recent financial activity tied to Joe's name or his property. Took some digging, but I found what I needed. He'd been late on payments 3 months in a row. Quiet, under the radar. Probably hoping to catch up before it got noticed. I filed a complaint. Anonymously. Said he might be hiding income to avoid taxes. I knew the system well enough, used to work logistics, knew a guy who used to audit small businesses. This wasn't revenge. It was leverage. Because Joe had a weakness. He still cared about appearances. Just like her. A week later, his office was audited. I didn't need to see it to know how it went. The silence from his side of the family was enough. Even his son, the one who used to call me Uncle Ray and run into my arms at barbecues, had gone quiet. By now, the web I'd built was stretching tight. She was unraveling socially. He was unraveling financially. And I was steady. Then came the letter. No return address. Just my name, written in a handwriting I recognized instantly. Hers. I opened it on the porch, sunlight warming my knees, cup of cold coffee in my hand. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. I see what you're doing. You've always been methodical. I guess I forgot that when I betrayed you. I don't blame you for hating me. I deserve it. But Joe's falling apart. And he's still your brother. That last line hung there. Heavy. Stupid. Still your brother. As if that meant something now. As if blood erased betrayal. I folded the letter, lit a match, and watched it curl and blacken in the ashtray beside me. 2 hours later, I wrote a new list in my notebook. Not names this time. Steps. 1. Finalize the evidence package. 2. Deliver it to his boss. 3. Visit his wife. Because she still didn't know everything. And I was ready to fix that. I didn't go right away. Something about facing her felt heavier than everything else. Maybe because she was innocent. Maybe because, deep down, I knew she didn't deserve it. But if I was going to finish this the way I started it, clean, deliberate, surgical, then I couldn't leave her in the dark. I owed her the truth. So on a cloudy Wednesday afternoon, I parked outside their house. The gnome was still in the yard. His stupid little smile cracked and faded from years in the sun. Funny how something meant to be harmless could feel like a mockery now. I knocked once. Then again. I almost hoped no one would answer. But she did. Karen. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. A sweater with a tear at the shoulder. She looked thinner. Tired. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Not scared. Not angry. Just confused. Ray? I nodded. Can I come in? She hesitated. Then stepped aside. The house smelled different. Not bad. Just empty. Like the kind of silence that settles in when people stop talking but still live under the same roof. We sat at the kitchen table. Same one we'd shared meals at during birthdays, holidays, summer barbecues. She poured coffee without asking. Still remembered how I liked it. Joe's not home, she said, her voice soft. I know. A pause. Why are you here? I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. Placed it on the table. Her hand trembled when she picked it up. She looked at me, searching my face for some hint of what was inside. Then she opened it. First came the photos. The texts. A printed log of the San Diego trip. Receipts. Dates. And then the one from the garage. She didn't cry right away. Just stared. Eyes locked. Lips pressed together. She set the photos down slowly. How long? She asked. I don't know when it started. But I know it wasn't just once. She nodded, slowly, like her brain was processing a foreign language in real time. He said it was a mistake. A one-time thing. I didn't respond. She looked down at the envelope again, then back at me. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know. Another long silence. She wrapped her arms around herself, like trying to keep warm even though the room wasn't cold. I thought I was going crazy, she whispered. The way he pulled away. The way he started sleeping on the couch. He said it was his back. I knew it wasn't his back. I looked away. Couldn't meet her eyes just then. I'm sorry, Karen. She gave a small, bitter laugh. You didn't do this. I still hate that you had to see it this way. She took a long sip of coffee. Then stood up and walked to the sink. Back turned to me, she spoke again. You remember our first family camping trip? The kids were running around, and Joe couldn't figure out the grill. You came over, took the spatula out of his hand, and said, "Don't worry, big brother. I'll keep us from starving." I smiled faintly. You always were the protector, she said. Even now. She turned back to me. What are you going to do next? I paused. That was the question, wasn't it? I haven't decided. But whatever it is, I won't hide it. She nodded. Good. Then she walked over, placed a hand on my shoulder. Thank you for telling me. I stood. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. On my way out, she followed me to the door. As I stepped onto the porch, she said, "You're not the one who destroyed this family, Ray." I stopped, looked back. I know. I got in my truck and drove. No music. Just the sound of tires on pavement. That night, I sat alone in my rental. Same chair. Same notebook. I added her name to the list, not under target. Under witness. Because she'd seen the damage. Felt the weight. And now she understood what I was fighting. I didn't want her involved beyond this. She'd suffered enough. But now the circle was complete. He had nothing left to hide behind. No lies. No illusions. No family shield. He was exposed. And I wasn't finished. Not yet. I hadn't planned to go back to the church again. After the envelope, after the whispers, I figured my work there was done. The cracks had spread far enough. But then I got the email. No subject. No signature. Just one line. You should talk to Ron. He knew. More than you think. I read it twice. It could have been a bluff. Could have been someone stirring the pot. But the weight in my gut told me otherwise. When a man's instincts have been sharpened by betrayal, he learns to trust the quiet alarms more than the loud ones. So I drove there that afternoon. Same parking lot. Same old wooden doors I'd walked through 1,000 Sundays. But this time I walked slower. Heavier. The front office was empty, but his door was cracked open. I knocked once. Come in, he said. His voice hadn't changed. Calm. Measured. But when he saw me, his shoulders tensed just enough to tell me he hadn't expected this visit. Raymond, he said, standing halfway. I was hoping we'd talk soon. I sat down without being asked. He stayed standing for a second too long, then slowly lowered himself back into the chair. I waited. He fidgeted with a pen. I take it this is about everything that's come to light. That's one way to put it. He cleared his throat. I didn't know the extent. I saw signs. I asked questions. She always denied it. I studied his face. He wasn't lying. Not exactly. But he wasn't telling the whole truth either. When did you first suspect? I asked. He shifted in his seat. About 2 years ago. My jaw clenched. 2 years. You preached to me every Sunday, Ron. Sat across from us at dinners. Prayed with our family. I know. And you said nothing? He looked down. For the first time since I'd entered the room, he looked like someone carrying weight. She begged me, he said quietly. Told me she'd made a mistake. That it was over. That she wanted to protect the family. I didn't want to interfere. I thought if I pushed, she'd leave the church. So you chose the church. I chose what I thought was peace. I stood. My chair scraped the floor. You chose cowardice. He didn't argue. I walked to the door. Paused. Looked back at him one last time. You should have told me. I know. Then I left. I didn't go home right away. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just let the road unfold in front of me. My hands were steady. My breathing even. But something had shifted. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just about Joe. It was about everyone who helped hide it. Everyone who smiled at me with full knowledge of the knife in my back. The betrayal wasn't a moment, it was a system. And now that system was going to feel what it was like to rot from the inside out. By the time I got back to the house, it was dark. I poured myself a drink, neat, no ice, and sat by the window. The silence wasn't comforting anymore. It was fuel. I opened the notebook again. Ron's name moved. He was no longer just a witness. He was a participant. I circled it in red. Next morning, I called a friend, Warren, a retired journalist who now ran a small blog on local corruption, church scandals, and the occasional feel-good community piece. We hadn't talked in years, but when I said I had a story, he invited me over before I could finish the sentence. I brought a flash drive. Inside, everything. Messages. Affair details. But most importantly, Ron's acknowledgement that he knew. Warren read quietly. Then leaned back in his chair. Are you sure? Would I be here if I wasn't? He nodded. You want names used? Every one of them. He let out a low whistle. You understand what'll happen? I'm counting on it. 2 days later, the story went live. Headline: A respected pastor knew of affair, stayed silent for years. It spread faster than I expected. Comments flooded in. Some shocked. Some angry. A few tried to defend him. But the damage was done. By Sunday, Ron didn't show up to service. By Monday, the board asked him to step down for the time being. By Tuesday, the church issued a public apology for failing to uphold the moral standards expected of its leadership. And just like that, the pulpit was empty. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just made a cup of coffee, sat down, and crossed another name off the list. This wasn't vengeance. This was correction. And there were still a few more corrections to make. It was time. I'd been patient. Methodical. Careful. Everything I needed to set in motion had been set. And now it was all coming to a head. I woke up that morning before the sun. Didn't need an alarm. Just instinct. I'd slept well, not because I was at peace, but because I was ready. Ready to finish what they started. The final piece was the event. A retirement banquet for Joe's boss, a man I'd met more times than I cared to count at barbecues, company events, church gatherings. Joe was on the committee planning it. Of course he was. Always trying to be the face of good business, good family, good community. It was being held in a local banquet hall, neutral ground, open invite. I knew people would be there. Employees. Their spouses. Members of the church. Even the mayor was supposed to drop in. Perfect. I didn't plan to make a scene. That was never my style. I wanted something quieter. More effective. Something that would leave a mark without a word. I arrived 20 minutes before the event started. I wasn't on the guest list, but nobody stopped me. I still looked like someone who belonged. That's the thing about familiarity, people stop asking questions. The projector was already set up at the front of the hall. One of those rolling screens they use for slideshows. Photos of the boss through the years, family vacations, workplace celebrations. It was all very wholesome. I waited. 10 minutes in, people were seated. Joe arrived with Karen, and from the look on her face, they were barely speaking. She kept her arms folded, looked at anything but him. Good. That meant she'd read everything. When the lights dimmed for the photo presentation, I moved to the side of the room, near the A/V table. The guy running the laptop got up to grab a plate of food. That was my window. I stepped in. Slipped in a USB. Replaced one folder with another. Took less than 10 seconds. When I walked out, no one noticed. 3 slides into the presentation, the screen flickered. Then it changed. Not to anything explicit, I made sure of that. Just enough. A photo of Joe and my wife. Together. Smiling. In a hotel lobby. Dated 2 months before our anniversary. Another, him behind her at my garage, arms around her waist. A text message between them, he's so oblivious. I almost feel bad. Almost. Then it cut to black. Gasps. Whispers. Then silence. It lasted maybe 20 seconds, but it was enough. The boss stood, confused. The screen went dark. Joe just sat there. Frozen. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. Karen stood up and left the room. I watched from outside, through the glass doors. That was the moment. the exact second when everything they'd built, all the lies, the pretending, the image, collapsed. And I didn't need to be inside to feel it. I drove home with the windows down, wind in my face. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat in silence. Not out of grief. Not out of reflection. But because silence was no longer hollow. It was full. Full of justice. Of closure. Of something finished. And then, around 10, the doorbell rang. I didn't move at first. Just stared at the door, drink in hand. It rang again. I opened it. She stood there. Same woman I'd married 50 years ago. But something was gone now. Something permanent. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes were red. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. "I just want to talk," she said. I stepped aside. Let her in. She didn't sit. Just stood in the middle of the room, like a guest in someone else's home. "You destroyed everything," she said. "No," I said. "You did. I just let the world see it." She wiped at her face. No tears. Just reflex. "I lost everything, Ray." "You mean your lies? Your mask? That's all that was ever yours." "I was lonely," she whispered. "So was I. You just didn't care." She looked at me, like she wanted to scream, or cry, or beg. But she didn't do any of it. She turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. "Was it worth it?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. And I closed the door behind her. The morning after she came by, I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee in one hand and my old dog's collar in the other. He'd been gone for 5 years now, but I kept the collar in a drawer, next to my father's watch and my Navy tags. Some things you hold onto not because they matter now, but because they remind you who you were before it all. The sun came up slow, quiet, like it had nothing left to prove. I breathed deep. No rage. No plans. No shaking hands. Just air. Just the taste of something like peace. It didn't come with banners or applause. Nobody called to congratulate me. Nobody said, "You did the right thing." That's not how life works. You don't get a reward for surviving. You just keep going. I hadn't spoken to Joe since the banquet. Word around town was that he quit his job the next day. Some said he left town entirely. Karen stayed behind. Moved in with her sister for a while. I didn't ask questions. She sent me a letter a week later. No apology. No bitterness. Just one sentence. "I see you now." That was enough. As for my wife, she didn't come back again. She didn't try. The house we'd shared for decades was sold. She moved somewhere north, closer to one of the kids. I heard about it through our middle daughter. She said her mom needed space. I didn't argue. I just told her I was fine, and for once, I meant it. I wasn't happy. Not in the way movies sell happiness. But I wasn't broken either. I was steady. I still woke up early. Still brewed black coffee. Still fixed things around the house even when they didn't need fixing. Old habits die hard. But I didn't carry weight anymore. I didn't flinch when I passed the church. I didn't turn my head when I saw people from the list. I didn't let my mind wander to what ifs or maybes. Because I'd faced it. All of it. And I didn't blink. I started volunteering at a local hardware co-op. Nothing fancy, just helping guys patch up their homes, fix squeaky doors, replace busted floorboards. I didn't talk much, and neither did they. But we shared the same silence. The one that comes after losing something you thought was forever. Sometimes, that's all you need, someone who knows what silence means. One of the guys, Glenn, Vietnam vet, built like a brick wall. He said to me one day, "You got a storm behind those eyes, brother." I looked at him. Said, "Storms past." He nodded. "But the ground remembers." We both laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd let out in months. I still walked past the old diner sometimes. The one where she and I used to split pie on Sundays. Now I go alone. Order the same pie. Leave a bigger tip. Smile at the waitress like I've known her my whole life. Because in a way, I have. Everyone reminds you of someone when you've lived long enough. That's the strange part about getting older. You stop expecting answers. You start collecting truths. And the truth is this: she betrayed me. He betrayed me. Others knew. They lied, smiled, looked me in the eye while I burned. And I did what I had to do. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't raise my fists. I just showed them who they really were. And walked away whole. Maybe not the same. But whole. Sometimes, I sit by the lake out past Route 6. There's a spot where the trees bend just enough to frame the water like a photograph. I take my notebook. I don't write anymore. I just hold it. Let the wind flip the pages. They are full. 10 pages. 10 names. 10 stories. And now, a blank one at the end. Not for revenge. Not for pain. Just for silence. The good kind. The earned kind. And as the wind moves across the water, I lean back in my chair, close my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I don't think about her at all.